On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, the Oklahoma City Thunder knock off the Houston Rockets to advance to the NBA Cup Championship. An 83rd game is on the schedule. We're going to dive into the Rockets game, preview the Bucks game, and everything in between on today's show.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you talking Thunder basketball. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at Hello Thunderpod. Joining me today is Michael Martin at Michael on Sports. Let's talk Thunder on YouTube. Michael, here again on another Monday, a victorious Monday for the Thunder as they head to the NBA Cup title. How are you feeling?
Feeling very respectful of the cup right now.
That's what you have to do. You have to respect the NBA Cup. The second year, although first NBA Cup championship technically, because the Lakers call it the in-season tournament on their banner, so they didn't get to call it the NBA Cup. This will be the first time that an NBA Cup banner will be raised to the rafters, perhaps in the Paycom Center. They got to that point by beating the Houston Rockets. What was the biggest takeaway from the Thunder's win over Houston?
Just how much farther and further away Shai is the best player from the Rockets in this game and just in this matchup overall. In a lot of these series, sometimes it can come down to as simple as who has the best player, and Shai by far was the best player. He was really slow with like a 1 of 8 start, but I don't know, it reminded me of almost like a good doctor or a good physical therapist where they can kind of just look at you, touch you a little bit, and they're like, they can immediately diagnose what the issue is. And Shai is getting better and better at that, of sort of just adapting on the fly and figuring things out. You really saw him sort of just catch fire on the scene where I think he had 12 points at half and then was up to 19, like halfway through the third quarter. But overall, just Shai's dominance and then just the Thunder's ability to sort of take those punches from Houston and turn things around really stood out to me.
Yeah, I think that the Thunder did a good job of adapting to this game. It was obviously a weird setup, neutral site, sleepy crowd, playing in Vegas, and playing a team that you just played 5 days ago, or 5 games ago, I should say. But the Thunder handled it all very well. I think that the biggest takeaway for me is similar to yours about Shai. The Rockets just don't really have a chance to beat the Thunder in a playoff series, and it is too early to talk playoffs. In some ways, we're not even at Christmas yet. But you look at the Western Conference standings, the Rockets are only half a game up on the 4 seed. And so for as good as they've been, they could still be in that 4 or 5 round to where the number 1 seed Thunder would need to play them in the second round if they win. I just don't think that the Rockets have what it takes to win a series. And it's not to discredit them. I think that they've made 2 significant strides. Last year they made a big stride. This year they made a big stride. I think that they have the right coach. I think they have the right front office. I think that they have a lot of the right pieces in there in Houston, but they don't have that go-to score. And the only way the Rockets can win games is by getting it into the mud. And if you get this game into the mud, Shai and Jada are the 2 best scorers on the floor. They both play for the Thunder. And so down the stretch in a star-driven league, especially in the playoffs, I'd bet on those 2 over anyone on Houston 10 times out of 10. I don't think it'd be a sweep. I think that you would get a Fred VanVleet 38-point night like you got 5 games ago, and you'd win by 3 like you did 5 games ago in Houston. But it wouldn't be enough to win 4 times out of 7 games.
Yeah, I don't think so. And maybe you can tell me I'm wrong here, but maybe they'll have Şengün as an all-star, but I can't imagine a team making a deep playoff run without a single all-star on their roster. And this league is about top-end talent, and they really seem like they are primed to go make that next superstar trade, and then maybe they do that. They have a bunch of role guys who look like they would really, really fit next to a star. But until then, just guys like Şengün, who's a solid player, VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, and others are either just not high enough level players or just too inconsistent for me to really have too much fear about in a potential matchup with the Thunder.
Yeah, I think that it presents the interesting topic of Jimmy Butler. I can see both sides of it. I think that there's plenty in Houston, including Jackson Gatlin of Locked On Rockets, who doesn't believe that there's any merit to that that's not going to happen. But by the same token, if they went out and got Jimmy Butler, then that changes everything because he's going to stay true to your defensive identity and give you a offensive punch and a player who we've seen many a times in the playoffs rise to the occasion and drag rosters there. This would be a roster that is more than capable of being carried to a deep playoff run and an unexpected playoff run if everything breaks their way. So I mean, if they went and got Jimmy Butler in February, then obviously everything changes about this team. But as they presently are constructed, I think at best they take 2 games in a 7-game series from Oklahoma City, and that's still massive progress. This is a team that only has, their veterans like a Dylan Brooks, like a Fred VanVleet, like a Steven Adams, and of course Jeff Green, who have played in playoff games. Everyone else is like new to all of this and still young, so they are making those strides. It's just going to have to continue to be incremental steps for them.
Yeah, they feel like, let me know what you think about this comp. The Kings were offense a few years ago when they made their big leap towards the top of the Western Conference. The Rockets are defense focused, but it feels very similar to that, where you've got a lot of younger, unproven guys like some Fox, Sabonis, guys like that, which I think are better than anybody that the Rockets has right now. But those guys, and then they get into a series, and it's a feel-good story for them, and then the sort of the reality check hits of you're playing against the Golden State Warriors, who have more playoff games and more finals games than a lot of your guys have games in general played together. So I think that's something in for them. And then as for like the Jimmy Butler trade rumors, I feel like that would be sort of a shortcut. To me, the Rockets feel like they're the team waiting on the next unhappy guy to ask out, whether it's a Devin Booker or whoever that might be. I mean, they were on Giannis watch for a while before the Bucks turned it around. So I would advise the Rockets and their fans to stay patient, because eventually, just like the history of this league, especially in the last 2 decades, that merry-go-round, eventually it's going to come around to somebody who it's worth trading for.
Yeah, eventually you're going to be able to not have to settle. I think Jimmy Butler would be a bit of a settle, obviously, just because of his current contract status, his age, all that goes into it. I don't think he's the perfect fit. He would help them in a big way this year, but it creates a lot of headaches as soon as the season's over, truly, with this player option and what you do moving forward in the new CBA, plus whatever you'd have to relinquish to get him in the mix of all of that. I think that the Rockets-Kings comp is a good one. Of the Kings went to the first round. They battled hard going to 7 games, and just Steph Curry was Steph Curry. It is what it is. The Rockets, I think, would see a similar story unfold, where they'll be maybe a home court advantage team. They'll be a top 5 team at least, if not a home court advantage team in the Western Conference, because they're going to be so good and disciplined in the regular season. They're going to rack up wins. Like, I think that they'll probably be hosting a playoff series with that 4 seed. And in a 4-5 matchup, of course, they can take that team to 7 games. And if you get to that 7th game, anything can happen. Like, you can win a one-off game, especially whenever you can kind of count on your defense to shut off the other matchup. But then if you progress to the second round, I don't see how they win a series against Oklahoma City, Dallas, or anyone else that you expect to be there. So we'll see what Rockets look like at the end of the year. But through 3 games, it's been a lopsided win in Oklahoma City. It's been this runaway win in Vegas, and then the narrow loss against the Rockets in Houston, where they got the all-time heater from Fred VanVleet, which you cannot count on, especially with how inconsistent he's been. But other than that, I thought that for the Thunder, Isaiah Hartenstein continues to be the absolute perfect fit, and I can't help but continue to watch him and envision what this could look like if and when Chet comes back.
Yeah, you're not hearing a lot of the people from the offseason who were talking about it being an overpay, which we talked about a lot of. It's like, it's an overpay financially, just the money, the dollars and cents, but in the long scheme of things, where the cap is being set up for this Thunder team with the extensions down the road, it's not a big deal, and it's worth the slight overpay because you're getting some other guys on bargain deals. He and Caruso were massive differences in that one, just the grit that they provided. And then also, I don't want to skip over Kenrich Williams, who really helped spark that sort of bench unit whenever the Thunder got off to a really slow start.
Yeah, on the recap show, I mentioned you do not win this game without Kenrich Williams. I really believe that it was a catalyst for a lot of this. And as far as overpaying Isaiah Hartenstein, I think that if you were putting him into a Moneyball Oakland A's tool where they can spit out exactly what they think a player is worth and not go a penny more, sure. His overall evaluation would probably be lower than the contract that he got. But when you factor in it's Oklahoma City, and they had the money to spend, they're not going to lure away someone else in free agency. And this fills a need that stays true to a team that they've been building over time. And it doesn't hinder any of their future moves for re-signing their young guys. It's a no-brainer. And it's kind of like an Oklahoma City tax to get a guy to come to a small market, to come to a team like this. He was able to sign on, and he's been excellent. He's been worth every single penny of that contract. But coming up, the Thunder do have a date with the Milwaukee Bucks set in the NBA Cup championship. That poses the Giannis question. For as good as this defense is, I don't know that there's a clear-cut strategy. We'll try to figure it out on how to defend Giannis. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at Mint Mobile, go check out Mint Mobile today, because with big wireless providers, you will see a change for you where you go to the store, you try to sign up, and somewhere between that store trip and your home, the price magically skyrockets. Well, with Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about that gotcha moment ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month, and whenever you purchase a 3-month plan, they truly mean it. So say goodbye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with the premium wireless plan starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, and it's delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. So use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. That way you can bring your phone number along with your existing contacts with you. So ditch the overpriced wireless companies with Mint Mobile's deal to get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. And this is for new customers. It's a new customer offer for whenever you get your new 3-month premium wireless plan starting at just $15 a month. Go to mintmobile.com/LockedInNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedInNBA. Cut your wireless bill of $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedInNBA. $45 upfront payment required. It's equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on the first 3 months plans only. Speed slower after 40 gigabytes on unlimited plans. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Joining us today is Michael Martin at Michael on Sports on Twitter and Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. Michael, 83rd game on the docket now. You got to wonder if Mark can still say 1-82 whenever they're going to play 83 this year. We'll have to find that out probably as soon as Tuesday on how he changes up that verbiage. But starting just with the Bucks in general, the Bucks navigate through the group stage, get through the Magic and now the Hawks to get here to the NBA Cup championship. When you look at an up and down Milwaukee team that seems to have found their footing, Giannis, of course, the Cavs with 32 points in the semifinal. How do you defend Giannis in this game if you're the Thunder? What's the matchup? What are you trying to do?
I think there's a good chance that you put Hartenstein on him or J-Dub. They're probably going to go back and forth, and just have the other one as a help defender. I mean, you saw a lot of sort of that blueprint against Şengün. Giannis is obviously a much better player, but the game plan is going to be put as many bodies on Giannis, make him see a crowd as much as possible, no fast break points, and make guys like Gary Trent beat you, guys like Bobby Portis from 3, guys like Chris Middleton coming off double ankle surgery. And then as for Dame on the outside, you're going to have Lou Dort, you're going to have Caruso, you're going to have Case in a matchup with them. But it's really just going to be about making things as hard on Giannis as possible in the half court and just putting that well-known wall in front of him.
Yeah, I think that with Giannis, I would start with J-Dub on him as like his primary defender, with, of course, Hartenstein roaming around. Because if you see an area where you have Caruso who can scale up, you have Lou Dort who can play under bigger guys, you of course have Case Wallace and everyone else on this team that's a really good defender. If you start J-Dub underneath Giannis, have Hartenstein roam around, even when Brook Lopez goes away from the rim, keep Hartenstein at the rim and just trust that your smaller guys can go contest a Brook Lopez spray out 3. I think that's really the only strategy. And look, this is the best defense in the NBA, and Giannis is still going to score 32 plus points in this one. It's just baked into the cake. It's going to come down to how they can limit some peripheral players like AJ Green from going off, who's been good this season. Andre Jackson has had flashes, and he's been consistent this year. And then you have Dame, and Dame and the Thunder need no explanation. So maybe we'll see a Dame turn back the clock game. Maybe I'm overconfident in this Thunder team against Milwaukee, but I think that the only way the Bucks win this game is if Dame is vintage Dame on this big stage. Without a massive Dame game, I don't think that they get a win.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how the Thunder sort of operate and guard those Dame Giannis pick and rolls and 2-man games, because whenever they just go 5 out and sort of isolate, I don't think Dort's going to have a big problem. Dame is not the same guy he was a decade ago just in terms of speed, and those are usually the quicker guards are the ones that give Lou problems. And if you can throw Caruso, Case, and Lou out on him, I think they're going to be able to wear him down, and then defensively, he's not really guarding anybody. The Bucks have a similar issue where Andre Jackson is good, but they don't have anyone who's really guarding Shai either. And then as for Brook Lopez, I'm right there with you, where you sort of live and die with him shooting threes from the corners, and you've seen the Thunder have great success with the Mavericks and the Rockets recently in games, just rotating and sort of just beating those guys to the corners and stuff like that on these closeouts. So I'm willing to take my chances with that. But you mentioned those 32 points a game. What we haven't even talked about is Giannis is going to get to the free throw line a lot against this Thunder team.
And probably intentionally, too, as well, to get him there. And we'll see if he knocks him down. He did an all right job against Atlanta. Good enough to get the win at the line. And for his standards, a pretty good job at the line. I think he missed 5 free throws in that game. Now, the only pause I do have with this Bucks team, for as overconfident as I just was moments ago, I am curious how the Thunder's offense looks against Milwaukee. Because yes, Shai and J-Dub are incredible, and they are just lethal scorers, especially Shai, who's an MVP-level player. And Shai has been a more willing shooter, but he's been feast or famine, where like he goes 1 for 10 in Toronto, has a 5 for 9 game from the line this week. He's just been inconsistent from three. If he's not nailing those 3-pointers, and he's got to do the work inside the arc, and he's got to do the work at the free throw line and in. For as shaky as this Bucks team is defensively for their previous standards, they can still pack that paint, and they can still make life really hard on you and shrink the floor in that way. How will the Thunder navigate that? I think it comes down to if the Thunder get off to a really good start with Lou Dort and Isaiah Joe and Cason Wallace, and these guys that get the kickouts for open threes. If they're hitting those shots, there's a little Milwaukee's going to be able to do. But if they're missing, and now they're missing, and now you've got to pack the paint on Shai and J-Dub, then this game could get bogged down, and then you could see a really competitive championship game.
Definitely. I mean, you're going to see some combination of Lopez and Giannis guarding Hartenstein and Dort probably, and they're just going to pack the paint and have one guy standing around the rim, and the Thunder, driving kick is the name of the game for their offense in a lot of ways, but I think it's that. If their defense can sort of bog things down, that can make things difficult. But the Thunder, it's also going to be imperative. They have to win the non-Giannis minutes in these small ball lineups. When you have Kenrich out there or J-Dub at the 5, you really need to go out and run and get off to the races and things like that, because you mentioned it. Brook Lopez, one of the more underrated rim protectors in the league, and then Giannis is just a freak, no pun intended, as a help defender and just jack of all trades on defense. So you're really going to have to maximize those minutes when at least one of them, mostly Giannis, is off the floor.
And I think that this is going to be a fun game. You look at last year's game, which both these rosters have changed tremendously in the last season, especially the Thunders with the additions of Caruso and Hartenstein and the loss of Josh Giddey, who actually shot the ball well in Milwaukee despite the loss. I didn't really get a good feel. It's hard to with only 2 games a year against each other. And this year, there'll be 3 games a year because they're playing this extra game. But it was hard to get a good feel of, like, was it just bad nights from the Thunder? Was it something Milwaukee was doing? So just seeing how that trends in this game, I think will be fun and just another test for the Thunder, which is why I think that this is a good game to play. Yes, it's an extra game on the schedule, and we'll talk about that coming up. But as Mark always talks about, you want to test yourself. You want to have these stress tests. And so this is going to be a unique matchup where you're the better team, but they can do things to kind of get you off kilter. How are you going to respond to that? They responded to it greatly Saturday. Can they do it again on Tuesday and win the second ever NBA Cup championship? So, Michael, will they be raising the banner in the Paycom Center?
I think they will. To reiterate a point from before, with Giannis, I think he just tends to grind teams down. And another big thing is we're trading out Hartenstein for Chet, so that's going to be big. But a massive, I guess, difference maker in this is going to be sort of paraphrasing what Cason Wallace said yesterday about the Thunder not getting punked. And you just can't get punked by a team like this, like with Giannis, Portis, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, others who are big and bad. But I think the Thunder come out with a win on this. I think that they pack the paint on Giannis and make things extremely difficult. And I think that you have a few bounce-back games shooting from some of the Thunder role players. We saw a really, really slow first half. But once the guys settled in, it seemed like everybody was all right.
Coming up, the Thunder play an 83rd game this year. Is that a good thing, a bad thing, an indifferent thing? Plus, it sets up an awkward schedule the rest of the week, which we're going to dive into. But first, I want to say right now, but good friends over at FanDuel, go check out FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can tackle the NFL action with a special Monday night doubleheader tonight with a $5 bet. Whenever you place that first $5 bet, if you win that first $5 bet, you will get $150 in bonus bets if you win by going to FanDuel.com today, placing your first $5 bet and winning it. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets. And if you don't care about the NFL, I don't blame you. If you only watch basketball, guess what? You can bet on hoops as well, including Tuesday's championship game where the Thunder are 4.5-point favorites over the Milwaukee Bucks to win the second ever in-season tournament, now called the NBA Cup Championship. Go check it out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles, beat writer for Thunder on SI. That's Michael Martin at Michael on Sports. Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. Michael, 83rd game now in place. Obviously, this game does not count toward the regular season standings. They'll play Milwaukee 2 more times. The rest of their series in the regular season account for that. But this game really only counts for the banner and for the cash prize in the end, but also for another high-level game that has stakes attached to it. How do you feel about that 83rd game?
I would say I'm a little bit indifferent to it. I don't think it's going to really bite this team, especially because they are such a young squad and they have been, relatively healthy. Other than their bigs, they've been all right. But in the long scheme of things, I know last year was very, very different because we had the 3-way tie for the #1 seed going into that last game. But most years, by and large, Ryan, I think you'd agree with me on this, those last couple of games when you have the #1 seed locked up don't really matter all that much. Like, even last year when the Thunder were playing for the 1 seed, Shai didn't even play 16 minutes in that one. So a lot of those games in late March towards the start of the playoffs, you're getting guys some rest anyways. So I don't think it's a massive, massive deal. And for 83 games, for all the sort of talk about that, the plan for this Thunder team is to play deep in the playoffs. So one extra regular season game I don't think should add that much. It is more risky, I guess, per se, knock on wood, to say that if they play another game, there is more injury risk. But by and large, I just don't buy it as this massive, massive factor.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything to write home about. I think, it's a weird quirk where it does set up, by the way of the rest of the schedule, 3 games in 4-night stretch, and all 3 games are in different cities. So you're going to go from Vegas on Tuesday, go down to Orlando for Thursday's game against the Magic, over to Miami for Friday's game, and then you return home to take on the Wizards on Christmas Eve before you have a 2-game road trip and then finish out December and start January on a massive homestand. I just don't think that it matters. I think that the pros outweigh the cons. Like, yes, if anyone gets hurt, God forbid, on either side, it will suck because this is a game that you are playing more than anyone else is playing. Like, you're going to play an extra game than anyone else. I think that, these things just happen though. Like who's to say, especially if it's like a injury that is hard to prevent, and it's just like Chet's injury against Golden State. Like, that happened in game 10. I think if I told you, in October, what do you think of game 10? You'd say, oh, it doesn't matter. It's a dumb game. Yeah, you lost your big man for the majority of the regular season in a game that does not matter. Like, this game has stakes to it. This game is fun. This game is something the league is trying to sell. And sometimes, like, you just have to be a good partner. It is a partnership between the league and the teams. And so they're trying to sell this thing. It's going to be fun. They're going to make it a big deal. And it's not going to hurt you. And yes, you're going to have a 3-game and 4-night stretch, and you might go 1-2. Like, you could lose to Milwaukee and then beat the Bucks, beat the Magic and lose to the Heat on a scheduled loss because of all the travel. Sure, that could happen. But again, if I told you in October that you're going to lose a November 17th game against the Heat, you would not bat an eye. It would be, okay, so what? What happened in the playoffs? Like, it's hard for me to really get up in arms about playing this 83rd game for the Thunder, or for any team for that matter, because it all balances out in the wash. It doesn't count against you if you lose it. And I just think that this is the way it's going to be. Now, the Thunder have been uncharacteristically good at, comparatively to the rest of the NBA, at avoiding schedule losses. Can they keep that up? This is going to be a big week for it. I do think that playing the Magic with no Paolo, no Franz, that's going to help them. There's going to be limited scoring punch for Orlando. They found ways to get to get it working, especially against the Bucks, where you saw Jalen Suggs go off and he's had a few big games. But I just think, Michael, it's different playing the Thunder. Like playing the Thunder's defense is different. We saw what that Magic team looked like with Franz in Oklahoma City just a few weeks ago. They could not score the ball. Like I'm very confident that the Thunder win on Thursday.
Yeah, I feel the same way. The only way that I think the Thunder would lose would be sort of that layover of winning the cup going into a game like that. But I'd be more nervous if it was the inverse of the schedule with Miami first, then Orlando. But playing in multiple different cities, it's an hour and 15-minute flight from Orlando to Miami. It's not a massive, massive deal. And then you sort of already set the table with it without Franz and Paulo. The Magic are a really, really stout team, really good defensively, but the Thunder are just going to overwhelm them with depth and talent. And then this Miami team is not sort of the Miami team that we've seen in the past decade, sort of post Big Three. And so I'm just not too nervous about that unless there is something that happens where, there is the Miami flu where all the guys for the Heat all of a sudden hit a bunch of threes. But I think that if you were going to get into this sort of schedule loss situation, this would be a nice place to be in. And then you have the Wizards coming home, which should be another good win.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the schedule, but by the same token, I will say we usually on Mondays give you our picks of what they have to do. So like for that week where they played the Jazz and the Raptors and the Pelicans, we said they had to go 3-0. I don't have a hard stance. I mean, you can feel free to give yours if you do, but I think you got to go 1-2. You can't go 0-3. Like you got to avoid 0-3. But win one game, and then I think the rest will be explainable. Like in any order that they happen, I think that they'll be explainable as long as you win one. So it's a very low bar, especially for a team that's 20-5 and has expectations to win it all. But this week specifically, it's just so awkward. If they go anything better than 1-2, I think it's another big win.
Yeah, I'm going to project 3-0 to 2-1 because if the Thunder lose to the Bucks, they're going to go out and just blitz the Magic in a real way that's just not going to be really fair and then have the same energy for Miami. If they beat the Bucks and then beat the Magic, there might be a little bit of a letdown. That Miami game that I mentioned that's just sort of weird, and you have Eric Spoelstra really, really preparing for your team, so he can throw some monkey wrenches in there, but I'm not super, super worried about it. Obviously, the biggest threat is the championship game if the Thunder are going to have a loss, but time and time again, just the Thunder have been the more consistent, more reliable team, and that usually ends in wins.
The next time we talk, Michael, the Thunder could be NBA Cup champions. They could be preparing to raise a banner on Christmas Eve against the Wizards. Again, I don't know if they're going to raise a banner that night, but they are really quick on the trigger with getting banners in, so perhaps they could get it in by Christmas Eve against the Wizards. And what a fun night that would be if it happens. So let's see what happens on Tuesday. You'll have another preview pod, hopefully with Locked On Bucks on tomorrow's show. But Michael, let them know what you are working on, what they can already go check out, everything on Let's Talk Thunder.
Most recently, the video I had put out was J-Dub at the 5 and just sort of highlighting those lineups and what's made him special doing that. I have some good quotes from Mark, Hartenstein, Shai, and others. And in the video I'm working on right now that will probably come out on Tuesday is just sort of the difference that Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso and Kenrich Williams in particular made against the Mavericks in that big win in Cup play the other week.
It was a big win against Dallas, perhaps a turning of the tide for a series that kind of got lopsided in Dallas's direction. Go check out Michael's video on that. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.